down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
Savvy investors, oh shucks, we're going deep into Chicago, Illinois, a place I've only been there, O'Hare. No, I've been there once before, but I'm going back to Chicago because I have a new BFF who is, we're like a lot alike in a lot of ways, our personalities. But I got to bring people on the show that are better than me. Joe Mueller is effing killing it for many reasons. He's been a real estate investor for 15 years now. I got him on that. I've been on 17, but he's got me on being a broker, which is really cool. Another thing that Joe got me on that he's doing a really great job. I'm just super impressed. He's an out-of-state investor in 2 markets. We may talk about that. And then the next thing that Joe does better than me, which is Joe does better, like Joe Mama. He has an incredible podcast called Investor Empowerment Series Radio Show. So it's a big mouthful. So write this down, folks, peeps. Investor Empowerment Series Radio Show. And I've listened to it so gnarly that his second episode that he already had sponsors. So you slapped me on the sponsorship, and I listened to your second podcast, Joe, and I was like, this guy's already got sponsors. What am I doing wrong?
Right.
Well, I need to be like Joe. So welcome to be on the show, my friend. I'm so excited that you're on the show.
I'm totally pumped to be here.
Yeah, just folks, how I knew him. I met Joe just less than a year ago in Ohio at the Ohio convention, RIA convention that Vina Cox puts on, which is an outstanding event. We do this thing a day before called the Deal Maker Session or Advanced Deal Maker something, where 50 of us got in a room and just loved on each other, encouraged each other. I'm struggling with this ghetto tenant, and it's amazing to have 49 other people say, do this. So Joe has contributed to that group. He's a very powerful investor, and, man, I'm excited to learn a lot from you today. So that's it.
Awesome.
So tell us about Joe. How did you become a real estate investor? Okay, go.
So let me tell you how I got started, because I think it kind of helps set up what my life has been like for the last technically 20 years of having an interest in real estate. Because when I was in high school, you know, you're trying to figure out your life plan, right? And you're meeting with counselors, and they're telling you, you know, like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? And there's some similarities we haven't even discussed yet, which was I was into music. So I took my passion in music, and I thought, okay, I'm going to get into sound engineering because I want to maintain this lifestyle of being around bands. And, you know, I was doing some band management. I was hosting some shows locally for some local bands that, you know, high school age type stuff. And that was kind of one of my first adventures into entrepreneurship. You know, I'm booking VFWs, and I'm charging $5 at the door, and 100 kids show up, and, you know, yada, yada. While I was in high school, really my secondary passion was just reading and learning more about entrepreneurship, because I wanted to essentially be involved in business. I just didn't know it yet. And wouldn't you know it, one night I'm watching late night television. It's like 1 a.m. and Carlton Sheets pops on with his no money down program. And I had just gotten my first credit card. I was like 16 or 17 years old, and I was working at Little Caesars Pizza. So shout out to all my friends I'm still friends with from Little Caesars. But yeah, I bought that program, and while I was going to school for sound engineering, I started to try to put some of that material into action. In all honesty, none of that stuff panned out, but I maintained that level of interest in real estate, and I kept reading, and I started going to some networking meetings in the Chicago area. And eventually, I found my initial passion at the time was the foreclosure sheriff sale, you know, the auction block, the stuff that's going, you know, advertised in the paper and putting your 25% down at the auction, bidding live with other investors, and then having to come up with the remaining 75% within 24 hours, which the only reason I was able to do that was borrowing from family, essentially, that got me off my feet. So I did a couple properties when I was, you know, real young, probably right around 19, 20 years old-ish. I don't remember the exact time frames, but that was truly how I got started. In order to do that, I spent a lot of time investigating, you know, title and figuring out how the foreclosure process works, because at the time there was no like Zillow out there to tell you what the values were. So I'd literally be like busting open the paper on a Sunday morning and seeing what was for sale in the immediate area, in the classified ads, and driving neighborhoods and properties to figure out, if I go bid on this house at, 123 Main Street, am I going to be able to make money on it? Through that process, the sound engineering aspect of my life and the school aspect kind of digressed, and I got more heavily involved in real estate, and I eventually got my broker's license because I was kind of tired of, and this is the real reason why I got it. I had no dreams of being, on a billboard someday and selling 100 houses. It was because I couldn't get access to the information that I needed in order to be successful as an investor. And in order to get more information, especially being a kid, 20 or 21 years old, calling up a broker and saying, hey, can you show me some houses on this street? I mean, it just wasn't happening. Things are a little bit different in different areas of the country, but in Chicago, these brokers they're time management type situation. Unless you're dealing with a brand new broker, they're not going to just show some random investor houses without proof of funds or without some evidence that they've got some intention to close a deal. So that's why I got my broker's license, and that's what kind of started me more into the foreclosure world, because I was so immersed in the investment side that when I got hired at my first brokerage, I was the only broker out of like 70 that were there that had any interest in dealing with investment properties. If that makes any sense. Didn't at the time, but they basically handed me any opportunity with working with an investor or a foreclosed home or a HUD property. Like, I was the guy, and I had some opportunities to take some classes through some of the government agencies about buying foreclosures. All stuff that's pretty kind of boilerplate information on how to get started in investment properties. I was making connections on that end, and that eventually led me to meeting my first bank client, which again at the time made a ton of sense. Like, hey, I'm going to these auctions, I'm bidding on properties, I'm flipping houses. I was only doing a handful a year, and then I was doing some brokering as well with other investors. And one day this guy from Ohio walks up to me. I'm bidding on this house, and he kept bidding me up. Well, it turns out he was representing the bank as the second lien holder. So I'm bidding on the first mortgage. He's bidding on the first mortgage as well, because he's going to lose his interest in the property completely if I get it. He ends up, overbidding me by like some ridiculous amount. He just keeps racking it up. So I let it go, and he walks up to me afterwards, hands me a card, and says, hey, it sounds like you're interested in this property. Are you interested in buying it? And I was kind of like, well, not anymore. You just overpaid for it. I'm like, I don't want it. And we chit-chatted for a few minutes, and long story short, he was back in town a few other times. We had met because he was from the small local community bank out of Ohio that had a couple assets in Illinois, and I was like his boots on the ground guy. So he would ask me, hey, can you run by the property and see if it's still occupied? Can you check on this property? Tell me what you think it's worth. Real basic stuff. And at the time, I didn't really know what the end result was going to be, but I knew the foreclosure world and the foreclosure market enough to be dangerous, so I just kind of rolled with it. And he ended up giving me my first REO listing, which eventually led me down the path to that side of the business, which has been an incredible journey over the last, we'll call it 10 years or so. I started my own brokerage within 6 months of being licensed as an agent. I jumped out of the franchise world and just went independent, worked out of my house. I was the only person who, represented my company, and I started with this first client. He gave me a couple assets, started making some money on the brokering side. I kept investing as well. It was a nice synergy between my interests and my passion in investing, and then dealing with, like, I had first crack at looking at these houses. Now, I wasn't allowed to buy them because the bank would make me sign essentially a non-disclosure saying that I couldn't be buying properties that I was going to end up listing for them. But at the time, it was still so cool that I was the guy, getting into these houses, changing the locks. I was the first person to get inside a house that had been vacant for a year, for example. And it just inspired me to keep working my way up on how that REO industry works. And in the last probably 5 years, we've sold over 2,500 REO properties. After the crash, obviously, that was a huge bump to my business, because we were dealing with hundreds at a time. I think at one point we had over 600 assets and inventory that I was just representing on the bank side. The only regrets I have in that process was, I was still young. I'm still learning every day on how to run a company and how to build a business. And, I wasn't focusing as much on my personal investing while I was selling all these bank-owned properties. But in the last couple of years, I just been going gangbusters to try, once that market kind of started to turn around a little bit, still a lot of opportunity in Chicago, as well as some of the surrounding markets that I've invested in. and just getting in there and buying everything I can, buy assets, right? Just like you say.
Yeah, totally. All right, a couple quick questions. First of all, I wish I would have known you then when you had those assets. Of course, I'm just now venturing out of Oklahoma in real estate investing, but it'd be really cool to know you back then because you had all that inventory, and I knew that I would know that you probably need to unload that inventory to keep your stature going as the go-to guy. And I guess there was probably tons and tons of deals going on.
Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead. Well, anyway, let's just get into it. So from pizza delivery. Well, actually, our story is so much the same. It's amazing. Like I was in the music, I was doing clubs, same scenario event. I actually, just to add, if someone doesn't know, a lot of people don't know, I used to deliver for Domino's Pizza way back when. So you worked at Little Caesars, so we're gonna have a slice together soon. But have you sustained from? Tell us about coming from that humble environment. Have you been in real estate this whole time, and how old is it? Okay, I mean, how old are you?
I'm 37, so that's why I said it's probably about, we'll call it 15 years of actively buying and selling real estate, but as an investor. But my passion started, that watching that frickin' infomercial, back when I was 16, whatever years old, got my first credit card. That was the first thing I ever bought with a credit card was the Carlton Sheets No Money Down program, which was a big choice because that $150 was like, that was like a week's pay, or probably more than that at the time. But, I didn't know what I wanted to do other than I wanted to be involved in music. And, back in the back of my head, I was thinking, okay, well, I can do real estate by day and, music by night, because a lot of that type of the industry, dealing with the bands, all the shows are in the evenings. I had another buddy who ended up getting hired on at a really large production firm. So I had some connections with some bigger opportunities, which I ended up not getting involved in. But, it looked like for me, I had a way to build a portfolio and get into fix and flipping by day, and then, make some, maybe we'll call it make better money at night. Well, it was technically the exact opposite, and I abandoned that desire once I saw the light with real estate and how I could really make this work.
That's incredible. Okay, tell me about your parents. Were they influential? Were they supportive?
Oh man, my mom's not going to like this answer. So, again, when you're in high school, that you're being put down in a room, sitting down with some counselor, and they're trying to tell you, like, you got to make a choice on what college you want to go to. You got to figure out what your major is going to be. And my dad was like, "You're not going to make any money doing anything in music. I don't know what you're thinking." I had long hair. I was trying to be like punk rocker. I'm like, yeah, I can do this. And
wait, hold on. Do you have any tattoos?
No tattoos. No, I've never gotten a tattoo.
No
Not yet. I might put my kids' names on my. I might get my kids' names on my calves, but I'm not sure yet. That's just
no. But I'm all tatted out, and I wanted to be a punk rocker, so I totally understand. So keep going. Sorry. So your dad was like anti-music because you're gonna be like this starving musician. Okay, I get it.
Right.
I understand.
Well, it was the same story when I had then, we start going to college. He supported me because I was in school as far as, he's like, yeah, okay, go to college, whatever. He's like, just get a degree. You'll figure it out. At the same time, I'm like kind of secretly starting to do real estate stuff and learning this process. And it was kind of the same story. And, where he was like, yeah, he's like, real estate agents don't make any money. What are you thinking? You're not going to, this is never going to work, and those words, I mean, it just kept pushing me further. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make this work. This is gonna happen, and this is what I really love doing. Even after I was licensed, he's looking at my contractor agreement between myself and the brokerage I initially licensed with and got hired with here in Chicago. And he's like, they're taking 50% of your income every time you cut it. You get a closing, you're only getting half. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's just how it is, and I didn't know any better, and that's technically really not how it is. But a lot of these brokerages out there, I know you harp on brokers, and I'm not knocking that because there's a lot of issues that go on in that brokering world, and a lot of restrictions that regular investors don't have to deal with. Like I said, I got in because I needed access to information to make myself more successful as an investor. But yeah, they take on these newer brokers, and they they don't even have a plan. They just take them on and hope they kick them out of the nest and say, yeah, go sell some houses, call all your friends and family, and find out who needs to buy one. And that is the opposite of really how a successful broker is going to run a business. But that's a story for another day.
Tell me about your dad. Like, what was his job? Like, did he teach you anything? Like, what was his career?
Yeah, my dad, he taught me about the hardworking ethic of life. My dad was a full-time firefighter in one of the suburbs of Chicago, So he worked a schedule of a 24-hour shift, and then he had 48 hours off. So one day on, 2 days off, and then on his off days, he owned and ran a trucking company with like 3 or 4 trucks. So this guy would literally get up to go to the firehouse at whatever 6:30, get there, work until the next morning. He'd have somebody come in early at 4 a.m. and cover him so he could leave the firehouse. Then he'd drive a truck and he'd get home, and he'd get home somewhere between 5 and 7 o'clock at night. And then he'd do it all over the next day, like get up at 4 a.m., 2 a.m., whatever. There'd be nights I'd be coming home from hanging out with my buddies and my dad's in the driveway pulling out. I was like, oh shit. But that taught me, that hard work can get you what you want in life. And that has probably been one of the main foundations of, my experience and my success has been, you got to go after it. You got to keep working. There's times I put in, 23-hour days. There's times I put in 0-hour days, but that's because in the beginning I was hitting the ground running as much as I could, just work all day and sometimes into the night. And when I say work, that's what every investor that's listening to this does right now. I mean, that is driving for dollars. That's knocking on doors of foreclosure properties or pre-foreclosures. That's doing evaluations, taking pictures, checking out contractors, meeting different people, networking. I mean, this is all part of the business. As a matter of fact, today's a Tuesday. I've got a meeting scheduled here tonight at my office because we're big on networking here. We run a pretty big networking group on meetup.com, and we're going to have about 25 investors here tonight for a meeting. So my day today is basically packed to the gills. I haven't even seen my kids yet because I got out the door so early this morning. They weren't even up, and had to check some properties that I'm managing and actually generaling rehabs on. And I will not be home until probably midnight tonight. So this is how life is sometimes. But you reap the rewards in the end, and like we had talked about in the past, sometimes you end up with some time and vacation property, and take those rewards, spread the love with your family and the people that you care about. So I play hard, but then I said that right. I work hard, but then I play hard as well. So you might not see me for a week if I'm going somewhere.
Short-term pain for long-term gain. I love that story about your dad being blue collar and just grinding it out for you and giving you that work ethic. But now, as I know you, now you understand that you can leverage money, leverage your skill, use virtual assistants, and grow your business, just to the out of control. But I think that you needed that. We all need that. And I'm trying to teach that to my children to work hard now. And they don't like it. My kid said to me the other day, Daddy, why do we have to earn everything? Well, that's just how it is. Because, I won't give them nothing without doing something. They can't get a donut without doing a push-up. I mean, I know that sounds psycho. I mean, I'm being serious. But they know they value money now. I mean, at 7 years old, my daughter doesn't spend money. She saves it, and she wants to buy what she wants to buy. And, and she tries to stretch it out. But anyway, so are you still on REO foreclosures? I mean, 20 years later, you started at 19, you're still grinding that out. Have you ever considered writing a book about it? I mean, like an insider trader information.
I thought about it. The easy answer to that question is with the government kind of stepping in after the crash, a lot of the procedures and policies have changed on the government level as far as the opportunities that I can put out there as an REO broker. And I don't want to, I think I probably said that kind of wrong. There's certain policies and procedures that need to be followed now where there's not so many secrets there anymore. It's all pretty obvious. It's all out there. I mean, for the people listening, I'm sure they're familiar with like HUD Properties, HUD Home Store, Fannie and Freddie. I mean, all this stuff is available on the internet. All their rules and their guidelines are out there. Now, where I do see some opportunity in working with any REO broker is there's always a handful of clients that, an REO broker has in their portfolio of smaller credit unions or like some hedge fund or private equity type groups that may have picked up some of these properties for a song and a dance, and they're willing to sometimes, exit out of these for 50% of the value or for a significant opportunity. But it really takes work on the investor side to create those relationships. So I've got, I call them my back pocket buyers, but I've got a handful of back pocket buyers that are serious investors that always have cash on hand. And I know I know what they're looking for. And if that opportunity comes up through my pipeline on the REO brokering side, they're the first call I make. But again, it's creating those relationships with those types of people, because I can't go to my bank and say, hey, I can get this sold like right now for $50,000. Maybe you want 80. I know we talked about 85 or 90, but I can get rid of this like tomorrow for 50 with my guy, John. And that, that has to happen. I mean, they have to execute. So I've got a handful of situations where that comes up. But, as a little tidbit for anybody listening, definitely create relationships with the people that are dealing with what you want to buy in your market. So whether it be, buying and hold guys that are selling off portfolios through their broker or REO brokers. I mean, typically we all kind of we all find a niche at some point and we kind of stick with it and run that out. So that'd be my advice for anybody looking for opportunities. Definitely make those relationships.
And that's my agenda. My agenda is for people to be inspired by you, but I'm also trying to build a relationship with you. Hopefully one day I'll be big enough and I'll have all my ducks in a row. I'm like, Joe, find me some properties. Let's make this work. And I know, just like I have friends that buy property in Oklahoma, I drive by them. I check on them. Do I need to swap out locks for them? Absolutely. And that's the theme. And I think the number one thing in this game is relationships. You need to have them. You live or die by them. And I mean, you are a grinder. I mean, I would say 20 years you've been in the game, and 19, you're 39 now. You have obviously suffered, made decisions, good, bad, ugly, died on the cross, been burned. I can't imagine. But what has continued to inspire you? What motivates you right now? Like, what got you up, before the sun came up, before your kids got up? What motivated you? What's inspiring you?
You know what? It's the ability to control my own destiny, we'll call it. I enjoy getting up at the time. I'm like butt crack of dawn type dude. Like if the sun's already up, I overslept type thing. I enjoy getting a good start to my day. I think there's some type of mental peace to the point of having the first few hours of the day to kind of figure out what needs to happen and set the goals that I want to accomplish every day, every week, every month. In the end, the rewards, I'm seeing that I'm reaping some of those rewards now after being in this so long and trying to continue to, be an investor and grow a portfolio. And it really seemed like at some point in the last 5 years or so, I got over some type of hump and everything just started flowing. And then it put me in a position of making a decision every day if I want to stay home and play baseball with my kid or if I want to head to the office and grind it out. And that's probably my main motivation is being able to provide something for myself, but also my family, and then maybe a legacy as a result. I'm the same way, man. I'm tailing my kid down the driveway as he's pushing those garbage cans out for the guy to pick him up, tomorrow morning, and he's complaining about why he's supposed to do it and, this, that, and the other. But at the same time, he's learning that the value of a dollar and the value of hard work and what you get as a result, because, he's going to get something in return for understanding how the good, strong work ethic can provide value in the future.
I think that is my number one goal in our family is that we're done with this effing entitlement. You owe me something. No, you owe me. You need to work hard to get where you need to be. But all right, so let's get into some meat of stuff, and then this is going to be our main thrust, and then we're going to finish out the podcast because I want to bring you back out. I think you have so much knowledge and your passion. And, your podcast is amazing, and definitely, folks, Investor Empowerment Series radio show. He's authentic. This is the real deal. I love your gist. We're not selling you something. And it's so true. We could spend an hour just beating people up on that. But what turned me on to you earlier, Joe, is that you have this thick go-getter attitude, and I would say thick skin. How in the world you're investing in 2 states? And let's talk a little bit about that. Like what states? How'd you get there? And how'd you get the balls to freaking not leave your comfort zone of the Chicago area? You're a broker. Obviously you got money coming in and out. You have opportunities. What made you venture out of your zip code?
Okay, so that's a great question. I technically own in Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana. I've just got a contract on my 60th property last week. I've bought and sold some of my portfolio in that process. Actually, one of our mutual friends, Eddie McCracken, and I got into business last year, so we've done some deals, and we're holding some property together right now. But I guess, what happened to me was when the market crashed, I was into the apartment building game at that point in my career. The single-family opportunities that I still love and had initially started my investing career with, those were drying up in the city because by the time you went under contract to buy a property in Chicago in 2006 or 7, it was worth 20,000 more, a week later. And there was so much competition. I moved into the apartment building market and I started looking at, we'll call it C to C minus type areas where I could work with a seller on getting, a property seller financed for short term. I've done stuff with, 25,000 down, 6-month note, and then turn the property around as fast as I could and paid off the note, refinanced, and ultimately I had about 35 units in apartment buildings when the crash happened, and I also had a huge pile of debt as a result. So I had to dig myself out of this hole because let me tell you what happens when a market crashes and the financial markets all go to shit is nobody wants to give you a refinance. So when these properties came to maturity, I was on 3 and 5 year balloon type commercial loans. I needed to get them refinanced, and it was an eye-opening experience for me dealing with that situation to the point of, am I going to need, I'm talking to bankruptcy attorneys. I'm wondering if this is a route for me to go. How can I get out of this hole? Because I owed so much money and the values weren't there anymore on these properties. Ultimately, I ended up dealing with the banks that I had these notes with and renegotiating and staying whole and not foreclosing and not filing bankruptcy, but it was all back to that hard work ethic. And what that taught me was, the value of buying right on the front end. And it really taught me, number one, I don't like apartment buildings, currently at least. That attitude could change someday, but I don't really like them. I didn't like the experience. I thought it would be awesome, but I still love single family houses and smaller multis. But it taught me that I needed to be prepared for even when, the worst times are going to happen, and they're going to come again. I mean, I'm not saying next year or 2 years from now we're going to see a crash again. I think there's going to be something that happens, but I don't think it's going to be like devastating to the world. I just wanted to make sure that I had lower debt opportunities and higher equity. And what I did as a result of that is I started looking out of the Chicago area at other opportunities and portfolio purchases, which you'd be able to obtain higher equity and lower debt by purchasing multiple properties at once. So my first portfolio purchase was 17 properties in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area that I bought in 2012, which honestly, to this day, I don't even know. It was like a one-time deal, man. Like I'll never be able to pull that off again. There was some guy that was in trouble with the government or something. He messed up some government contract and his business was at stake, and he owned these 17 properties, which was 29 units total. And they're all like single family duplex, triplex type properties. And I had a couple connections from networking that were brokers up there. I got a phone call from a broker. He's telling me like, this is something to look at. I think you need to drive up here like now, because I'd already been investigating Milwaukee and Indianapolis as opportunities based on the fact that they were lower pricing, lower debt opportunities. So, I was scared. I was scared that I didn't want to end up in the same situation again where I owed some bank, $1 million that I wouldn't be able to pay off. So that drove me to other areas where there's houses for sale and in a price point like, you might see in an Oklahoma or in Indy. You can still buy houses in Indy for 30, 40 grand. So I picked up this first portfolio. I used an acquisition loan from a local bank out there. I put 20% down. It was a great deal, and that thing is like a cash flow hog. I mean, it's amazing. I don't think I'll ever be able to repeat that. And that really changed my mind on how I can operate my business and what I can do to create success, because obviously I'm not driving up to Milwaukee to collect rents, so I start.
No way.
I do
property.
Right. It's a 2-hour drive from where I live. Not terrible, but it ain't going to happen. And I'm busy enough. So I hired management out there. The portfolio needed work. And when I say that, there was some vacant properties in there. There was some tenants that needed to go. So it was a transition, and it took some time. It took over a year to get us back to a point where it was performing successfully to some degree. And even still then, there was deferred maintenance and things like that. So it was definitely a learning experience, but it opened my eyes to working on another level. That then drove me to more opportunities, Indianapolis, which, anyone who does research on Indy knows that it's been consistently, a hard driving real estate market with opportunity forever. I mean, it's been basically stable for 20, 30 years. So even during the crash, they're one of the only cities in the country that, dipped down just a touch, but came to like a zero appreciation level instead of like a depreciating asset class out there. So I got into
Yeah, I've been watching
property.
Indiana for a while, and you're right on the money.
Yeah, no, it's great because the market, the economy out there is growing. The city is pumping a ton of money into the city itself. They're doing everything right to make Indianapolis one of one of the top Midwest cities in the next few years. And to me, that was inspiring. I drove out there. I started looking at assets. I met with some brokers out there. I started shaking hands and talking to investors and going to some of these meetups. And when I say that, I do like a 3 or 4 day stint. I'd set up some meetings and things like that. And I'd hit up some of these investor groups, which, meetup.com is a great resource for, and just trying to figure out, okay, where should I be buying? Where's the market that the investors like the most? Where's the place I shouldn't be buying? And driving these streets. And, to this day, I still own property there that I haven't actually physically seen. But, I picked up some smaller bulk packages and ended up with 16. I think I originally had 17. I actually sold one of them off to another investor for a profit quickly after buying it. But so I have 16 assets out there, and that's like another 22 units or so. That was just how I got into it. And I own in Michigan. I have a 40-acre property in the UP, the Upper Peninsula, on a river. That's for me and the kids and the family and the wife. And that's my time away. No one's around, no access to real life. You're just watching great outdoors DVDs and eating pizza and hanging out, the family. And that's kind of how
I love, I can't wait. I'm following right behind you, Joe. I'm so excited to hear. It's just so funny. 4 years ago, I interviewed a guy similar to you, and my jaw dropped when he had so many units all over the country. In my mind, my capacity, I couldn't think that how do you get funding? How do you find the deals? How do you trust people to property manage them? Because, I'm a property manager here. And, 4 years later, it's totally possible. It's actually, you should be doing it. You should be buying assets, as many as you can, all over the world. What's the worst thing that could happen? You go bankrupt. What's the worst thing that could happen? You fly over there and you fire people. Yeah, it's going to hurt.
Right.
But you can get funding. I mean, it's not impossible. There's people in that market where you're trying to buy that need returns, and they can't manage it, or they don't want to do it. They don't have the kahunas, and you just almost kind of fell in it. I would definitely take your friend out in Milwaukee that pushed you to drive out there. Because, I would do that today. But 4 years ago, I was too scared. I had a low self-esteem. I'm just impressed with your desire to grow and to learn. This is not the Joe Show, for sure. It is the Joe Show. And I'm like, dude, you got me all. We've been recording for about 30 minutes, and I'm like, I just want to ask you 1,000 more questions. So what's your goals now? Where are you now? I know that you're in building relationships and networking, which is totally what is my focus right now. I would love to have 1,000 people in my network that I know personally in real estate that are doing it. That's a goal that I have. 1,000. Of course, I got followers on my radio show and my Facebook page. Yeah, they're insignificant compared to a real person like you. I know I can call you and you can give me accurate data. Or you can point me in the right direction. Hey, this guy's a private lender. He loans at this much. This is his terms. That's what I'm talking about. But I definitely think. Yeah.
Just to jump on what you're saying, I would say that things became exponentially successful at increasing my goals. Because I could tell you 5 years ago, owning 60 properties was like, whoa, is that even possible? Like, I don't even know.
Well, let's just be clear. You have 75 units. You're dealing with 75 different dynamics, 60 physical structures, but you're dealing with 75 units. So keep going. And what's your goals now? Like, how many units? Is it a number? Is it a cash flow number? Is it?
Yeah, I typically I'm going to make this a longer answer, but I typically only want assets that are going to produce $500 in net cash flow per unit. At this point, my initial number was 50. Obviously, I exceeded that, and I realized that I needed more in order to live the lifestyle that I can, where I can fly down to Florida and hang out for a couple days and take my kids to the beach over a weekend if I choose to. So I thought initially 50 would cut it. I still have the passion, the desire. I'm still young. I still have opportunity. I don't even know if I'm ever going to stop working because I find this isn't even a job to me. This is what I love doing. So now I'm probably at a goal of 100, we'll call it, but I don't think that's even going to stop me there because I'm just going to keep building and building. I don't see any reason not to continue to grow. But the key, I think, that I learned was the exponential change was when I really started to open my arms up to other people and offer them something, without a price tag on it. When I say that, I mean I'm working with brand new investors right now where I get, there's no mentoring, there's no, well, I shouldn't say that, there's no fee associated with what I'm doing. I'm just, solidifying relationships with people that either need help or want something more, and that has given me 10 times the returns in my business as a result. And I know that sounds like shit that you hear all the time, from all types of motivational speakers, but I cannot argue with that fact. It is 100% true, because there are people out there that I deal with on a daily basis that have become close friends that I mean, you start buying assets together, you're bouncing ideas off each other. Opportunities come as a result of these relationships because nobody can buy everything. And there's tons of opportunities out there. And that changed the game for me when I really started focusing on, not so much on myself, but more on other people, which I knew there would be some financial gain out of it, right? Because I'm a broker, I might sell them a house, whatever. That's cool. But that's just one deal. That's a couple $1,000s. That doesn't last. That's not gonna keep me going in a year.
Right.
But these relationships are potentially infinite, and I can't tell you. I mean, I have multiple projects going on right now where, I wouldn't even have these opportunities if it wasn't for sitting down with people and being genuine and, the good, the bad, the ugly. Talk about what's going on. And everybody's been through it. If any investor tells you that it's easy or that it's, it's going to be simple to try to do, build a portfolio, whatever, then I know right away that they don't know what they're talking about, because that's just not how this works. There's always good and bad, and helping each other helps everybody as a whole. And I think it ultimately pays, 10 times the return. That has really grown up.
Yeah. Dude, you're effing amazing, because I always think back, where did I come from? And there was a guy when I started in 1999 that was crushing it now. And to this day, he's still my mentor. I've never paid him. Sometimes he takes my call, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he's in freaking Puerto Rico, chicken, killing it, doesn't answer my call, and I'm dying. But that's the freaking point. And I'm coaching some students right now. Some students I have to charge because I have bills to pay, and there's some students that I see that this kid, I have a kid right now that just shows the F up, and he is so hungry. And I mean, my goal for him is to get a deal. And I love that you're doing that. And, I think that we've gotten so corrupt in this industry of gurus speaking and writing books. They won't talk to you unless you buy something. And I think,
right.
I don't want to be on Rip-Off Report.
Right.
Hey, they went to Steve Van Kellenberg's coaching, and, and some people will do it, some people won't. But the thing is, I just want to encourage you, man, don't stop. I wish I lived in Chicago. I wish I had more time with you, because you just speak my language. And I love Zig Ziglar said, if I want to be a millionaire, I have to help other people become millionaires. And to get where I want to go, I got to help someone get where they need to go. And that's how, I love seeing when I coach people and they started with nothing, and now they have 50 units, and they're set free for the rest of it. And that's minimal for them. We have bigger goals, right? Like I remember when I wanted 100 units, and now I'm at 135. I'm going on 140 this week. It doesn't matter.
Awesome.
It's just the thrill, and you get to help people along the way. I think that's the ultimate goal. And you inspire me, folks. You got to listen to this guy. You got to get on Joe Mueller's team. If you're in Chicago, get on his podcast. I'm serious. This guy, I cannot wait to see you in November. We're going to do it up big. We're going to wrap this up, because I found out through these podcasts, people, they lose after 20 minutes. They break off mentally, and I try to engage people. So we're going to end with this. What would you have done differently thus far? I'm going to hit you with some just random questions, but what would you have done differently thus far?
That's an easy answer for me. Is I would have migrated into rental portfolio ownership and building a portfolio of assets without flipping as much as I did, because that's kind of what got me started, was the flipping end. Because it's just like every educational platform out there, I didn't pay for them other than my first one with Carlton Sheets. I haven't bought one since, but it makes sense when someone tells you, start with wholesaling, then get into flipping, and then someday get into rentals. I don't necessarily agree with that. A lot of the flippers I deal with that are just getting started, I'm constantly beating them up, saying, don't, always have multiple exit strategies in each property that you're looking at, because it doesn't, forget what your forget what you think you want right now. You got to think about how do I make money off this asset? Maybe it is a flip, maybe it's a better wholesale, or maybe it's the perfect rental. You can't walk into each property and disregard it just because it doesn't work as well as a flip. Because if that baby brings in $400 or $500 a month in that cash flow after you've got it, fixed up, or you put some paint and carpet in that thing, whatever the situation is, then why would you not buy it? And I was that guy, 10, 15 years ago, where I was only looking at, flipping properties. So my advice would be always have that end goal of passive income as an investor, because that's really when the wealth starts to build and the true freedom begins.
Yeah, short term never wins. Okay, so
right.
I know you consume, you're always educating, you're taking classes, you're going to courses. I mean, you're doing it. What course or book that rings true in your head that you're like, damn, that was good? What book was it? I know The Savvy Landlord was legit, but I
did read The Savvy Landlord. I did enjoy that book.
Name another book.
Right now, Traction is my number one book right now.
Ooh, Traction.
By Gino.
I haven't read it, but a friend of mine has told me about it. It's like it's black with an orange word to say Traction.
That's right. That's it. Gino, something with a W. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. It's sitting at home on my bathroom sink right now, but that book has been inspirational. It can help you systematize and grow your business. That's all I need to say about that. I also reference the Bigger Pockets book about rehabbing houses. That's a good one. It's got, and again, this is all important stuff that investors need to know. Dealing with contractors. I mean, you wrote a book about dealing with contractors, and that is contractors can make or break you. And if you're going to be doing more, one property every couple months is one thing, but if you've got multiple projects going on at once, and you've got the same or different contractors, you got to stay on top of what they're charging you. And I guarantee you, by the time you get to your third or fourth project with the same contractor, all of a sudden the price that you paid on the first or second house is now going up a little bit more than it was before. And you're on your fourth house, and you're like, why am I paying $2,500 for this when I was paying $1,800 a couple months ago? So you really have to. It's a constant revolving. I don't want to say revolving door, because I try to treat the people that work for me well and pay them as soon as they finish the job. But I'm also walking through those properties, making sure it's done right. If it's not done right, I'm having it replaced, fixed, whatever. And if they're not willing to maintain that relationship, that I'm moving on. So definitely the book from Bigger Pockets on rehabbing houses, which basically is a guide to general pricing for what repairing houses comes down to. Those two I would recommend to anybody getting started in investing. Yeah, that's
awesome.
What I got. Yeah.
All right, Joe, it been a wonderful interview. Can people get a hold of you? How,
Sure.
There might be someone in Chicago, an email, a phone number. How can people get a hold of you? A website? Tell us.
The best way to get a hold of me and get a direct response as soon as possible is actually through email. So my email address is my first initial and last name, which is J Mueller, Mueller, at tanisgroupllc.com, which is TANIS Group LLC.com. I don't really want to give out my cell, but I think the email, because I'm big on text messages, I'm big on email. I kind of run my day based on what my inbox looks like, to the point where I'm setting reminders in my calendar, and it's all going through my Outlook email, and that's just how it works. So if anybody has questions about getting started in investing or building a portfolio or just talking real estate in general, whatever, the best way is that email address.
Perfect. All right, Joe, man, it's been a pleasure. Can't wait to see you in 2 months. And whatever you do, what do? You go what? Buy?
You don't have to prompt me. I already know. You can buy assets, man. No, thank you so much for the opportunity today, Stephen. It's been great.
All right, bud. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook, and always be buying assets.